Know this. Introducing the original blood clot podcast, not players. Soothing semantic. Special dedication. All the way from New York. Boom. Yeah, man. SWOT semantic. Yeah, me know. Boom. Soothing semantic. Yeah, me know. Big ups to the man now. Soothing semantic.
It is time, ladies and gentlemen. Have you been looking for luxury watches for quite some time, or have contemplated doing so, but you don't really know who you can trust and where the best prices are? Look no further. Time for Luxury has got your back. Make sure to check out the site. Some of the watches they sell include Patek Philippe, Rolex, AP, Cartier, Hublot, Richard Mille, and many others as well. Make sure to check them out. You will be very, very glad you did.
Welcome to another episode of Soothing Semantics. I am your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. And without further ado, here we are. Today, we have Anthony Sabatino. How's it going, brother? How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I am doing phenomenally. So Anthony is the owner, the CEO of I hope I'm getting this right, bro. Yes, I got it. Okay. ASPF Consulting. And we discussed emotional intelligence, so we'll get into that very quickly. But before we do, give us a little bit of an idea of what ASPF Business Consulting does.
Yeah, definitely. So I run a company. I'm a CEO and founder of a company called ASPF Solutions. And basically what we do is we consult businesses one-on-one in two major areas. The first of which is through omnipresence within branding, right? So a lot of people think about what branding is. A lot of people lump that in with marketing. At the end of the day, we focus mainly on omnipresence. How can we be everywhere so well that we can leverage it to what it is that we're trying to create and whatever that speaks to our ambition? So that's the first thing. The second thing is necessarily based in company structuring as well as delegation strategy, right? So we mainly work with small and medium-sized businesses. So usually we have a little bit of staff involved, right? Either whether it be teams or with partnerships and things of that nature. So how can we best delegate properly? How can we create flow of communication threads, things like that, to ultimately aid the flourishment of scale? So that's basically what we do.
Okay, phenomenal. So in terms of building a business, right? So say I have a real estate business, okay, and it's fairly on the newer side. What would be certain strategies that you would suggest to implement or that you would implement in order to grow it? Whether it be a newer business or a business that's 10 years old.
Yeah, so in those two scenarios, or whether you're brand new or 10 years old, there are some differentiators. But let's use the newer example, right? Let's say we just started off. The number one thing to understand is we have to be very honest and practical with what it is that we're trying to create, right? So a new business can be a blank canvas is the point, right? That's why there's a big difference there. So if we are honest, let's say we're just trying to grow X number, we're trying to impact X amount of people, we're trying to hit X amount of sales, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. What usually needs to happen is we need to create some sort of a flow to that goal. So basically reverse engineering it. So what I would do, the first thing, right, is if I'm being honest with myself, I know that ultimately the brand that we're going to build is going to be the ultimate top of funnel situation that's going to create basically all the opportunities and sales that we're going to need if done properly. So what I would be doing, first step is basically establishing my brand across platforms. So number one, not only establish credibility behind who I am, but also actually giving some authenticity behind what my name is, right? I think a lot of people speak to that. I think there's a way to do it that you create a little bit more authenticity, a little more access driven. And I'm sure we'll talk about access. It's a term that I'm very bullish on. I speak to it a lot in my content and my consulting. But ultimately, what I would do is I'd begin building my brand in a way that is financially stable enough for someone who's new, who can't afford to spend, thousands of dollars per month.
Mm-hmm. It's very important. It's very important to know your budget when you're starting out in something. You have to have the belief that jumping in the water and spending that money is one of the biggest factors in getting you to where you want to be. You can't play it too safe. Sure. But at the end of the day, you have to make some sort of risky investment. And consulting, marketing, those are very, very important aspects of growth. So in terms of social media, I imagine, you worked with Joe. What are elements of social media that you would implement?
Yeah, so I think there's a broad way to answer that question, and then I think there's more specifics. I would say, Joe's first of all, Joe's amazing, right?
Such a nice guy, man.
Such a nice guy, and so we worked together closely for a little while. We met through a different agency that he works with, and so like there's a difference between Instagram specific because he's obviously got that on lock. I think what's different is what I would say in terms of the cloud of social media is we need to understand why it's important to be omnipresent, why it's important to express things further than just Instagram, and the depths behind that. Instagram is obviously a mega platform. It's something that 99.9% of businesses need to have a genuine presence on, for sure.
Real quick, Tim, it's really crazy how only 2 years ago, I understood the value on social media and Instagram specifically, but I just didn't do it. I didn't have enough of a push to do it. Now, the more you spend in your business and you realize the necessity of social media, it's too competitive. If you want any sort of chance to compete in this market in 2021, going in 2022, you need to have a presence on social media. It's just the reality, in my opinion.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And then I think the reason why that's right is even more interesting to talk deeper on. So I like to think very deep on a lot of these blanket statements, right? Like blanket statement in this particular case being, you need to have a presence on social media to be successful. And some people, like to your point, will go 2 years where you kind of know it in your head consciously, but for whatever reason, there's a disconnect and the action doesn't get going. Well, if we understood the back end of why the action never took place 2 years ago, that would really aid us in going forward in whatever the next step would be. So that's like a key point. But just back to what I was saying before, the omnipresence of it all is extremely important, and the depths as to why is even more important. What I mean by that is this, because it's important to clarify. So we take Instagram, for example, mega platform. Everybody really does need a genuine presence on it to build a brand of any kind, right? It's kind of the one platform that people can always revert back to and feel safe on, right? They can get a grip of what somebody is, regardless of the PRing somebody's doing on it. The consumer always feels they can go to that as their safe haven. So it's extremely important. Why omnipresence is important, I'm going to keep relaying back to that word, because just to clarify what it means is we're on every platform, we're everywhere, right? I think
of God when you mention omnipresence naturally. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Exactly. It's a great example. Yeah. So basically why that's so important in the social media things is because let's say, for an example, right, I have this amazing presence on Instagram. My Instagram looks just top notch. It's the best thing anybody's ever seen. But then I Google you or I try to find you anywhere else and there's crickets. And I can't seem to find the credibility that matches what you have on Instagram. Because again, there's a lot of people that have amazing Instagrams, but just simply do not back it up with the other boxes remaining to be checked. And there's a big problem with that. So, especially when you start working with people of higher magnitude, of course, like I said, Instagram's important, but when you lack everything else, it creates a big time lack of depth and a lot of questions to become asked, right? Like, why is your brand so big here and not anywhere else? Have you not been giving any energy to anywhere else, or is there something else going on? There needs to be a big focus on paving it across the board and not just picking one, going all in on it and not giving any attention to anything else. So there's a big key there.
So you think, well, I know Joe mentioned to me very honestly, he doesn't really do TikTok. I don't know. I asked him if he had one, so he doesn't really do that. So are you kind of going against that point and saying that if you have a big Instagram, say you have over 50,000 followers, do you have a TikTok yourself with a decent following?
I do. So there's a reason, there's a humongous, we can talk about, this is extremely important to talk about. I'm glad you even brought that up to begin with. There's a reason why TikTok needs to be pushed on and you should be posting content on there, and why it goes against the grain of, only having a big presence on Instagram. TikTok is so big on organic reach right now, meaning the amount of, and this is important to clarify as well, what organic reach means is the amount of people on the platform that are consuming it, like scrolling through and viewing it, is a whole lot more than the people that are creating on the platform, right? So creators are a whole lot less, meaning every time that creator creates something, it's getting a higher organic boost than it would on another platform where the balance of creators versus consumers is more balanced. Like
TikTok, I wouldn't say it's that easy, but compared to other apps, compared to other platforms, it seems like it's much easier to grow your followers, right?
Well, of course, nothing's ever easy, right? We don't want, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Sure, of course.
The process is the opportunities there. It's not as accessible. The reach is not just factually like the data, right? Like it's not factually of higher reach than pretty much any other platform. That's just the fact. So to not be producing on it is simply missed opportunity, as well as it lacks the credibility of being across platforms. So the question then arises, why aren't you? Because the reality is that the attention is there at mass.
So here's what it is for me, by the way, now that you mentioned TikTok, because I posted 3 clips, 3 shorts from some of my podcasts. The other day I posted 3 more. They got no views. This has been on for a couple of days. Because I haven't really aggressively been posting. And I have a buddy I know this girl who works with her father's mortgage company. She posts a lot of funny content, but that's just these little clips of herself, but she's very clever and she has like over 300,000 followers. On Instagram, she has over 50,000. She's very good with social media. And I had her on my podcast. And then I had this other guy who's a realtor in Cali on my podcast, and his TikTok is a lot newer, but he's gotten to 77,000 followers. So their content's very different from mine. Because I have a podcast, what I'm doing is I'm taking a bit from the podcast and I'm putting it in. Of course, I can just put a video up of me doing something. It's not really what I'm trying to do. I'd be open to suggestions, open to hearing what people have to say about it. But I mean, this is an extreme case, but take Joe Rogan, right? Listen, I'm no Joe Rogan and I can't just go and copy what he does, nor do I want to. I want to do my own authentic thing. But people will sometimes look at a massive page and say, oh, well, they did it that way, so I can do the same thing. Not exactly. When he started out, things were a lot less saturated. He already had notoriety going into it. He can get away with certain things I cannot, for instance. So with TikTok, I don't even think he really has TikTok. Maybe he does, but so many other people are posting his content. It just, you know what I'm saying? They do the work for him at this point. So as a podcaster, what do you suggest would be a good way to build my TikTok? That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, number one, you can do what you're currently doing, but with consistency attached to it, right? Like, so people, just your same ideology, right? You look at someone like Joe Rogan who has this big page and everybody thinks it's so easy. Well, you could also look at people who have 0 posts and 0 followers on TikTok who all of a sudden get 1 million and we think, oh, it's that easy. Also now, right? So it's always both ends of that duality. So to you, what I would say was, this is your main, like, big macro piece of content. This is what it's going to be, 45 or so minutes long, or whatever it's going to be. You know, this is going to be a long piece of content, which you can then clip down and put into 30 to a minute piece of content. Great. Post it on TikTok. To accept, though, that it has to be, if it doesn't get done in a couple times and I've gotten 0 views or whatever, then we can't blame the platform, nor should we blame our, you know, I guess, execution of doing it. What we should be doing is redirecting our creative. So we should ask ourselves, are we being patient enough? Are we allowing consistency to actually take hold?
This is so important, dude. I love what you're telling me. Okay. I don't want to chew your ear off because I really want to hear more. I'm excited. This is a great topic because I was thinking about this for the past couple of days. Now go on, man.
Okay, cool. So first of all, I'm glad that that's the case because number one, it's resonating. So I'm sure it's probably resonating with a lot of your listeners as well.
Oh, dude, you know, because real quick, my podcast, right? I was talking to Joe about this, and I have a pretty good read on when someone's genuine. And, you know, Joe just comes off as so genuine. And he said, dude, you have an amazing channel. You just have to get it in front of more people. And he didn't say it in terms of, you know, you got to push it. He was saying it's awesome. It has to take its time. Obviously there's marketing and there are ways to push it, but you know, he really had good things to say about it. And thank God I've gotten terrific feedback. I've been consistent since day one. Started on August 24th of 2020. I know the day. I'm never going to forget the date. Never missed a week, man. Not one week did I miss. And that's just been my attitude. And I'm learning as I go. I'm learning to tweak different things. I'm planning on getting, you know, new mics. I'm going to get 2 additional mics, you know, 4 Shure SM7Bs. You know, I'm going to get all the equipment and, you know, eventually better cameras, maybe lighting. And there's so much to work on. But more than anything, the consistency is what constantly allows your brain to make these smart little tweaks as you go.
Yeah,
that's what I find.
You're 100% right. And so like how I would then take that, what you just said, back into what's happening with TikTok is I would, number one, apply that, right? So deploy all of that consistency and patience, because it does make a difference. There's people just like it. There's always a spectrum to this, right? There's people who are going to post one thing and get 1 million views and think, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then there's people who are not going to post for 2 years and you're never going to get that push. But who's to say when it's going to happen, when it's not? The key is to never blame the platform, because again, the platform, the fact of the matter is, has the most attention and the most ability for organic reach without spending dollars on media. That's just the fact. So if we want to then appreciate the opportunities as they come, TikTok is that right now. Again, that's not to take away from anything else. That's not to say, oh, we shouldn't post on Instagram, we shouldn't post on YouTube or LinkedIn. That's not to say that. This is an and game, not an either or. Very important to understand as well. So that's where a lot of people have the disconnect with TikTok as well, right? They're like, oh, I have an Instagram, I have a YouTube, I have a Twitter or whatever. Why have TikTok? I do enough. It's confusing as it is. Maybe, right? True, sometimes, but we have to understand it's more of an and game, and we have to speak to the honesty of our ambition. If our ambition is X and it's as big as you say, and your claims are as strong, you need to back it up with equal action. And if that action might entail you having to push the envelope a little bit and doing something on TikTok that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's not to say you have to start doing crazy dances like you see people doing, but that is to say, putting some more consistency around something that you feel uncomfortable about, or maybe don't even believe in the moment, it will matter. And that's not to say times.
No, go on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I was just saying, it's like, you don't want to ever look at it as a perfect science either, saying like, oh, if I only do this for 8 weeks, then it'll get me there. It's like,
oh, no.
Focus on the journne, not the outcome.
Oh, but for sure. No, I'm very, thank God I have a very good grasp on that concept in every facet of my life. I've learned that over the years for sure. And of course, I think I think I speak for everyone when I say there are times, of course, where you hope it just happens faster. But the reality is I think for me, the best way to continue to go, obviously, is to see a passion and really enjoy it. So for instance, with the podcast, I genuinely love it. So even if it becomes strenuous in terms of, damn, why am I not growing as quickly? I know that I have what it takes to be a big podcaster. I really do. And all that really matters is that, all that really matters is that I believe it. Ultimately. So with posting on TikTok and Instagram, I have no issue doing it. For me, it's really, I'd much rather delegate it. So once I'm willing to pay for that, I would prefer to have a social media manager. Once I decide, okay, I want to take 3 minutes to 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and then another couple of clips within the episode, I want Amy Johnson to take those clips, do all the legwork, so I don't have to be bothered. That's what I'd like to do. Instagram, I do feel, needs some sort of personal engagement as well. You can't fully delegate. I think it does need a bit of a personal touch. You got to be involved. But and I could be wrong with TikTok, but I feel like it's if you have somebody posting, who's going to know? You don't have TikTok stories, do you? Yeah,
no, they don't. But so I think the bottom line with both of those, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, or whatever other platform it is, the genuity will come out regardless. So like whether it's me posting or Amy Johnson, it's going to be a matter of your consumers will feel it in an indirect way. Maybe not like they're never going to know particularly that it's like, oh, that's definitely not him, right? That's definitely not him. Like they're not going to probably think that, but there'll be some, distance. And that might not happen every post, but it might be one every 6. And you have to just ask yourself whether or not you want to allow that to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of what you want. If you genuinely want to delegate that out of your realm of, actionable things you have to do during the week, by all means, it's amazing to do. If you don't want to do that and you want to be heavily involved, that's great too. I think ultimately what it always will boil down to is people want, and this comes down to like the entire like predication of my thesis of my content, is people genuinely want access to whatever brand that they are following, and whatever that makes them feel like, they feel like, and you have an obligation to create that and manufacture that in whatever ecosystem you're building across your brand, which is why omnipresence is so important. So think about it like that. That's another, I guess, different angle to look at it with. If you only have a presence on one platform, right? And people, people have this just genuine urge for inclusion. They want to be involved in a mission. They want to feel like they're surrounded in a team environment. They want to feel like they're a part of something. And you are just nowhere to be found everywhere else. You kind of you put a glass ceiling on what your brand can do.
Absolutely.
And if you also look at some of the biggest brands out there, none of them only have one presence on one platform. So we really do have to ask a question of, what are we modeling? Where are we learning from? And like you said, you can look at someone like a Joe Rogan where it's like, of course, he can get away with things that you can't. Me as well, obviously. But the point of the matter is, would I rather, just as a blanket, one-on-one situation, would I rather model a Joe Rogan process, or would I rather model someone who's telling me something that I don't necessarily agree or see that he has the results that I want?
100%. I mean, I'd definitely rather go with the person that actually knows what they're talking about, that has done the things that they say to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. For me, truthfully, it really comes down to capital. I mean, so long as I have, and I think that speaks for most people, although there are people who have the money and just don't do it. But yeah, I mean, if I had the capital to throw down, then I mean, fuck it. What am I even thinking about? I would hire somebody on Upwork or whoever. I'd honestly talk to Joe, and just be like, hey guys, listen, this is how I think it should be. Let me know your thoughts. Tell me your strategies. Give me your constructive criticism. I'm all open. Let's make this happen. I already have an editor for the podcast. I mean, that's night and day. Huh?
Let me jump in quick, because I'm sorry to go. It's so important, because the amount of people that say that exact sentence, and there's just one little tweak to it that I think can make all the difference. So this is pretty much what my company does in essence. So a lot of people don't want to be bothered, because whether it be confusing, it's just too much work, they don't have the time on their plate, whatever, all valid things. But all of them have that one sentence in mind. Like, they want to just delegate it out. They want to be like, all right, like, let me contact who I know and be like, hey, like, these are my thoughts. This is my outline, what I'm thinking. Let me know your thoughts and let's get it done. Valid, right? The disconnect, just the little tweak that should be made, is let's take some serious time, even though it's uncomfortable, even though you don't necessarily want to do it in the moment. Take the time to actually do it yourself for 30 days. Take 30 days out of your life and do it because of this one idea. And this will make sense. This is not rocket science, but it is a little bit lost in translation. If you can do it for 30 days, you are a billion times better judge of who you're hiring, of whether or not they're doing a good job.
Great advice. It's fantastic advice. Fantastic advice.
So important, because people want it so bad to just get it out of their life because it's annoying them. So like, just take it, go. But what they lose in translation is the time and money that wastes, because you don't necessarily know what you're judging, whether it's good or bad, or somewhere in the middle. The gray area is the nuance is killer. So we have to be able to take the 30 to 60 days, whatever it is to you, make it unique, but genuinely know how to judge. And that's basically what we do, right? Like, we're literally consulting that to make sure that, and of course we have partners and even people on staff that can do the creation part of things in the production. But I have no interest in doing and giving that to somebody if they don't know how to judge it. Because then I'm just the person giving them some blanket commodity that they can get anywhere. We want to make some sort of a transformation in this process. So the way that we do that is by injecting the actual strategies in your head as the owner, the leader. That way you can then you can see how the path then trickles down a little bit nicer and smoother.
It's fantastic advice, dude. I love that. It's so accurate, in my opinion. That's awesome. I love that, because if you just throw it away and you just hope that, okay, they've got it, it'll explode, everything will work out. You have nothing, you have no basis to say whether it's really going well or not, because you haven't done the work yourself. I love that. Now kind of go into more about what you guys do. You especially with the emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So basically, with the emotional intelligence stuff, the reason I bring it up is because I think it's important in business, right? Because, and we kind of spoke about this a little bit privately, the more that you know about yourself, your self-awareness increases, the more you're able to understand how others are receiving what it is that you're putting out into the world, right? And whether that be through branding and content, right? And the distribution of it, you can get a better sense of feedback, or it could even be in one-on-one communications with clients if you're working with them, or with partnerships, or with your staff, like owner to staff relationships. either way, the amount of uses that I'm understanding more of your self-awareness, and then the depths of EQ around self-awareness, which we'll talk about, whether that be, things like self-compassion, self-love, things like that, play, a lot of people lump that into the woo-woo stuff, like the lifestyle, that kind of thing. But there's a genuine practicality to it in the business world. Those soft skills bring more to the table because it allows the other person to empathize with who you are, which is what everything. Business is the relationship art of all arts. So if we can put ourselves in a position that we're better understanding what we're doing, which then correlates to what they're doing, there's a whole different system going on. Because if we can believe that, and you can choose to not believe this, but if we can lean into the fact that we're kind of all mirroring each other in some way, shape, or form, it gives us more of an indicator, like, oh, wait a second, let me understand what it is that I'm giving off. Because there are things that you're doing completely unconsciously that, unless you are aware of them, they're affecting how you do business. And whether that be through one-on-one situations, like working with clients, like maybe I do, or even if you run like this product business that you have no hands-on approach to, the amount of communication style and threads that you have with your staff and your team, and even just, customer service with, buyers, it matters and it comes off. So what I do basically is, in the consulting that we're doing, we're making sure that we're always kind of backing it up and bolstering all the actual in the trenches business tactics with why they make sense emotionally, so that they actually stick. Because this is the whole point of what a commodity is over a brand. Like, I can go buy, a marketing service. I could throw a rock and find somebody, you know what I mean? What I can't do is make sure that whoever I'm buying from can make sure that I'm understanding it to the point where it's stuck in here, so that now I can make sure I'm affecting everybody sustainably for the future. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can go things through data. Like, we can create marketing campaigns. Great. There's 1,000 people, in New York City that can do that. Probably more. But the point is, like, I want to make sure that whatever we're doing, number one, we're giving at least enough knowledge and education to the owner or leadership team, who's ever in charge, that they can then be the judge and jury of what it is that they're hiring, as well as they are in a sustainable place emotionally, knowing that all the strategies that they're putting out now, these new things that they didn't know prior that we brought to the table, now we can say, okay, this is why this makes sense. This is why it should stick. And this is what I want you to be able to portray to whoever you're telling, right? Staff, clients, things like that, and have it make sense to them too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because I think thinking how to word it, I mean, the mirroring is something that I really try to focus on. At the same time, being a former New Yorker, there's definitely that directness that I have. So, I try to, if someone's not New York and not as straightforward, I have to kind of learn that, how to navigate that. So thank God, I think I have a pretty good knack for that. And I do quite well with relationships, but I know those things are very important.
They are. And so, like, just to piggyback off that, right? Like, we can even go deeper, right? Like, obviously I'm a New Yorker too. And that straightforward attitude that we both have to each other, it flows, right? Because it's natural, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be like the conscious, like, face value of what we come off as. It's actually deeper than that. So basically, yes, you're right. And then number two, let's say we're working with a client, we're trying to work out a partnership deal with somebody, right? And we forget that we're beings and we have a memory, and all of those things are living in us. And it always is going to come out in some way, shape, or form when somebody else triggers it. So we don't necessarily know what those triggers are a lot of the times, right? So let's say we're in a partnership situation and we're talking with somebody that we want to do business with, could be a client, could be whatever. And that person says something that triggers us a little bit. Maybe it's a financial number that makes us feel insecure that we haven't hit a number like that yet. And a little bit we get turned off, right? You can't see anything. That's why I say, like, it's not necessarily like a New Yorker attitude. It's more like, it's like the energy that you're putting out. The mood in the room changes and you can feel it. And when that's happening. And what's happening is whatever insecurity that triggered you has just been exposed, and now it's floating around in the air and nobody knows how to handle it. So that weird feeling that we all have makes a big deal in business, right? And the more that you can kind of get a hold on these things and awareness makes a big deal. So the ideology behind it all is like, hey, listen, the more that I understand about my insecurities, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing, we can brace it for the oneness that is, right? We don't have to sit there and be like, oh, woe is me. It's more like, let's just take what we now know that we struggle with, right? And put that in a place that we can own it. Let's put that in a place that it emotionally processes through me, as well as bottling it down and letting it coming out at the worst possible moment when I'm trying to do a deal. You know what I mean? things like that make a big thing. And so like there's examples that I could go probably for hours with you on, but the amount of people that I work with that say the words, they say the right words that make sense, but their actions don't speak anything close to it. And the reason is all these disconnects are living in them emotionally because maybe they don't feel like they're worth it, right? Those, those upper limit beliefs that a lot of people struggle with, they don't feel like they're capable. So all these words they're saying they heard on social media that make sense to them, but in their own heads, they're like self-sabotaging. That happens a lot too. So, there's a lot of these things that really come into the midst of it all that people are genuinely just operating life unconscious of. And until you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to control your life. And there's a great line, and I just basically reiterated it. It goes, until you make the unconscious conscious, we will call it, it will control your life and we will call it fate, right? Like, so like, we'll basically go around and be like, oh, that was, that meant to happen. Or, like that makes sense. It didn't work out today. Like, yeah, maybe, but you can also understand that like your awareness can evolve and you can make shifts in yourself that will direct outward. And
it's always been a very paradoxical concept, because it's a very nice way to cope, to say, it was for the best. And there's an element where I believe that's true, because there are certain things you can't control, but then most things you can. So it's always the question of, was that the kind of thing that was meant to be, or did I not put enough effort, or did I not have the foresight to either avoid it or be more proactive in having a better outcome?
True. And so it's funny you mentioned that, right? So like, whether it be controlled or uncontrolled, there's no reason to have to control anything. A lot of people have control issues, and I'm not saying I'm on some pedestal here. I think we all have control issues in some realm. It's more a matter of when we're in a position where we're like, oh, I wish if I could have done more, right? Like, or I could have positioned myself in a better place. All those, yeah, could be, right? I always fall into that default of, well, I would never have known the alternative if I would have done it differently. So that's kind of an easy way to remedy whatever, woe is me that you're living in when you're attempting to control something, right? A lot of things you can't control and a lot of things you can. There's no perfect direct relationship there. It's like in the moment, it's contextual, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of it all, though, is if you were to have done something differently in your own head, that you're like, oh, if I would have done this differently, then that would have happened, you would have never known the alternative. What is just is. That is just the flow of things. Right. There's this, play that we're putting on in our head is completely, in our own head. It's nowhere else. It's as invalid as anything in this life. So to kind of fall into that understanding of there is no other alternative other than what you have done, and to focus on what you can control and cannot control, is just basically wasted time. Like, just do, you know what I mean? Like, do what your intuition is telling you to do what the facts are telling you, look at the data. You can do all these tactical things, but the second that you kind of steep into that, should I have controlled it more? Should I have let go? Should I have done more? Should I have done less? It's just let it go and move on. And like, it's easier said than done, but you have to always recommit to the fact that you would have never known the alternative. So this wasted time of going back and forth is as just wasted time.
Very true. Very accurate. I'm pretty sure I heard this said with, ever heard of Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David?
I don't think so.
You should check him out, man. Brilliant guy. Has very big social media channels. Huge YouTube, very knowledgeable. Definitely check him out. I feel like you'd like him. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he said something along these lines of, don't dwell too much on what could or couldn't have been. Ultimately, every action going forward, I'm just really expounding on what you're saying, is an opportunity to teach you. Just you can wonder as a learning lesson why maybe you could have done something better, but don't dwell on it too much. Think about it, use it as a learning lesson, like I said, and proceed. That's the end of it. Yeah, so it's very true. People, that's what cripples so many people. Because right now, I went back on the podcast quickly. Been doing it over a year, haven't hit 1,000 subscribers yet. But then I tell myself, hey, you've cut you. Real quick, I think Steve Harvey said this. If you're already, well, I don't feel I'm in hell, but this is an extreme quote.
Sure.
If you're already in hell, why stay there? You might as well get out of it. He said it along those lines, and it's like, yeah, why would you stay in hell? Get out of it.
Yeah.
So I've made the 71 episodes. I've been consistent. I'm seeing growth. Yeah, I'm not, of course, I don't have 100,000 subscribers when some people blow up in 3 months, but I'm going to quit now. I mean, it hasn't crossed my mind. But I mean, I've thought, obviously there have been moments where I've been like, oh, come on. But I mean, just the idea of dwelling, like I said, I don't dwell on it. I just say, okay, well, what can I do better? And that's also a good question for you, is when do you think something just needs time? Because that's an important thing of just really knowing yourself and knowing what you're trying to create. When does something need time, and when is something just completely a wreck and needs to be completely switched and form? And
it's a valid question. So I don't think there's a perfect answer to it. I think there's always going to be context. It makes all the difference in the world, right? What works for me is not going to work for you, vice versa. And obviously the environment in which we're in will change. So there's going to be different answers. I think at a macro though, if your intuition is speaking to you, because everybody knows what that feels like, when that's happening and it's not going away, you should ask yourself whether or not you just need to be deploying some patience and taking maybe not a step off the gas pedal, but
this is really what I needed to hear, man. I love this.
I'm glad. Like, this is so important to me. Is like in a weird way, we all need to hear it. It's like,
sure, man.
I think it's just what everybody needs. But when your intuition is speaking to you, and this goes for everybody, I'm glad it's resonating with you, and it obviously resonates with me too because I'm saying it. But like when it's speaking to you, everybody knows what that feels like, and you have to keep on keeping on, and when something's just horribly wrong and is a wreck that needs to be scrapped and on with. Like these are feelings, and this is again comes down to that self-awareness.
Too many people ignore their intuitions. This podcast is like, I think about it, I have these visions, and I think about having these big guests and getting on these platforms, and I have certain topics that I want to discuss on Joe Rogan, and to other people, I don't even talk about it with many other people. I've talked about it with maybe one or two people that actually believe that people that I know believe I would do it. They just don't necessarily believe it'll happen.
Yeah.
So I don't even bother bringing it up to them. I'm just like, I'm going to just go fucking do it, and it'll happen. And then they'll be like, what the hell? What happened? How'd that happen?
Yeah.
But I have these huge plans, and every day my brain is like, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. Just keep doing those things. This is you were built for this shit. And I have friends that tell me at the end of the day, friends can tell you everything you want to hear. It has to come from you at the end of the day. It's nice to hear these affirmations and the validations, but they're kind words are not going to get you there. But the intuition, man, it's like, it's so fucking powerful. And that's what really keeps me going, man. It's my brain, my body, my soul. It's telling me, dude, you got to keep doing this.
And right, exactly. So when all that's connected, there's a very distinct feeling that it's almost like
it feels right. It feels right. It feels right. Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I feel like that is when you understand how you just need to relax and take some patience. And when I say relax, I don't mean take a step back. I mean like keep going, but don't stop based on what your brain is telling you. It maybe isn't practical right now, because we have this weird messed up relationship with time a lot of times. So like you said, a year you've been doing this?
A little over a year. Yeah.
A little over a year. Like, so how short that is, like in the grand scheme of things. But again, we convince ourselves and rationalize so much that we're like, oh my God, I haven't reached X amount of subscribers yet. Like, and we rationalize and we fall into these weird feedback loops that only actually hurt us. And taking it back to the last conversation we have, it's like just wasted time. Like once we reach those points, we're like, oh, hold on a second. I would have never known the alternative. There could be a life right now where I did this podcast and 4 guests in, I hit 100,000 subscribers. Like that could have happened somewhere else, but it didn't. And this is just what it is. Like, right. It's just a keep on keeping on moment. And to your point, when you had mentioned, with like other people's, because I think this was a lot of people too, with friends' advice or parents' advice or, different acquaintances that, in a business world, they're all coming from their own experiences and what they've accomplished and what they deem possible in the time span that they value. That means absolutely nothing with you. And if you look at it more of almost like a safety process, like a lot of these people actually just want to make sure that you're safe and happy. So anything that kind of contradicts that in their own heads, they're like, oh, wait, don't do it. Don't take the risk, because they're just giving you advice based on their own internalizations.
I love that you're saying this, because whenever I'm very critical of that. So there's a lot of friends, a lot of people in general that are not going to say anything. And this is pretty much what you're saying. This is exactly what you're saying. They're not going to want to tell you anything negative because they feel like that wouldn't be a supportive friend.
Right.
All the more so, as much as I appreciate it, if I feel it's genuine, I want someone to be like, dude, you could have done this or you could have done that. And I have friends occasionally that do that. And I'm like, dude, I appreciate you. But then again, there's also an element where I have a bit of pride. And if I have a friend that never made a piece of content, or someone I've never met, even more so, that's never made a piece of content, and they're like, yo, bro, have you thought of doing this? And you thought of doing that? And part of my brain's like, have you ever made a fucking piece of content in your life? Like, do you have any idea what it takes to do it? Not that I'm some big podcaster yet, but do you know what content creation is? Do you know what goes into it? I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they just throw out this advice, and part of me, and part of me should probably listen, because at the end of the day, they're consumers. So, you know, in any business, if you have a clothing company and some people don't like some of the shirts you're putting out, you might want to listen and you might learn a thing or two. You know, same with haters, for instance. You know, as much as people don't want to listen to the haters, sometimes they might have a point. So I really haven't gotten, like, I've never gotten any comments from any trolls saying like, yo, your shit sucks. Granted, it's not big enough for that. I'm very confident once it's got like 100,000 followers, people be like, yo, this and yo, that. I don't really see myself caring, but then again, I'm not there yet. So I can't really say, you know, it's very hard to say that, to make that distinct, to that determination, because some stuff, you know, can really get to you. Yeah, man. I mean, you've touched on so many good points. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other in terms of the business, and you know, other things that you're looking to build on for yourself? You know, because and I appreciate you reaching out, by the way, because this is also having you and Joe reach out, right? You know, so close to each other. It's that to me feels awesome. Just having people, especially with large followings, reaching out to me. It's nice. It's humbling, man. It feels good. It's you know, I put the work in. It's very nice.
Well, I appreciate you, you know, saying yes. So
Yeah.
I would say, so I want to say two things. So number one, for what, you know, what I'm building on. So I'm starting a podcast too that's launching on January 1st, which is great. I have something that is basically like my pride and joy, the piece of content, well, not the piece, but the, I guess, area of content that I'm most excited about and have already committed and executed a good amount of them already. But where I'm really like, has the best feedback, it has the most value and packs the most punch. So I started a vlog on YouTube, and it's basically outlining, there's 6 currently up on YouTube right now. And they're around, some of them are around 10 minutes, some of them are around like 22 minutes, but they're basically outlines what it goes into, basically my life, as well as different things that I can help consult on and different strategies to go into building a small business. And we're, you know, basically going around New York City. We're doing what my life entails, right? But a lot of it includes different consulting calls. Vlog number 6, I just posted it 2 days ago. Amazing feedback already, because the premise of the vlog was the inside behind the scenes look of what a content creation day looks like. So you get to kind of see what it's like for me actually shooting content in a mass way. So like, we're in the city, I'm at the office space I have in the city, and I have like a suitcase, we're changing clothes, like it's like cool, right? And it's an interesting look to understand what goes into things like that, because it's so easy to just PR ourselves on Instagram or wherever, but to look what goes into it is extremely important. And it humbles the people who are maybe not creating at the level that you are. I think like, that's what he's doing. I can do that too. Like, it's not hard. It's not even that time consuming. Like I actually have a chronological like timestamp along the day, so you can follow how long it took me. It only took me like 5 hours to get 18 pieces of content that are completely different. Like, so it's really cool. And you have a good time doing it. At least I do, you know, like when you like being in front of the camera and you believe in what it is that your content represents, it's fun. So, you know, I'm going to be pushing hard on that in 2022. The podcast is going to be big. It's called the Anthony Sabatino Show. It launches January 1st. And
so definitely a lot of letters, brother.
Yeah.
Hopefully, hopefully people will be able to remember that.
Oh my God. Yeah. There's a lot. But I just wanted to say this one thing though, like that'll be, you know, whatever it is that I have going on next year. But I want to give one thing that I think can speak to everybody, whoever is creating content or running a business or building a brand or whatever. Really, really focus on creativity and uniqueness. Something that I believe in heavily. I've made its own specific Instagram post about it with a really in-depth caption. I believe in creativity / uniqueness more than anything. Meaning, look at what you're doing, understand that there's so many other people doing what you're doing, especially in like my industry. You've got people that are putting out business content.
Gary Vaynerchuk said something along these lines the other day, and it literally just my my body was like, go on, man, go on. I'll tell you what he said afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. So I believe in creativity so much because it's the gateway to differentiating yourself. And I always think back to this example. Let's say, a lot of people who are listening to this are owning their own business or somewhere in the, spectrum of doing so. But think about the other end of the spectrum, which is like, let's say you're going to apply for a job and you're sitting down in an interview. What's the most common question ever, at least that you prepare for, is what makes you different? And for whatever reason, when we're creating content, we completely forget about that. And we're like, oh no, let's just do what everybody else does. And like, because it's comfortable. We know what to do because we can copy and we can model. But the second that we have to get creative, we have a blank state in our mind. We don't know what to do. And to focus more on creativity and whatever it is that you're doing, whatever industry that you're doing, the most saturated of businesses in the world can still become creative because the cream always rises to the top no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
And just to like almost articulate what that means, and like even someone like me, like the reason I started the vlog was because there's like nobody else doing it. And the feedback that I got from that vlog in reference or opposition to things that I posted on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever has been completely different, because people are like mind blown at the fact that they can consume content in a way that's a vlog to a business owner. They're like, oh wait, I thought vloggers were like people who like go to ice cream shops and like capture it on camera and like make jokes and like run around with their friends. It's like, yeah, that's also, you know what I mean? But like, you can be creative in whatever you're doing, because you have to know that you're basically like your ability to connect with your audience, no matter how small or big it is going to reflect on how creative you can be to get their attention.
I couldn't agree more. I love this. So I saw a Gary Vaynerchuk. First off, couple of things that really keep me going with the podcast. And I keep talking about the podcast, but real estate also, I really, really love it. And that's the primary focus. It's that that's really the moneymaker. And, I hope the podcast will grow to a point that I can do that and just get into investment right away. But, either that's neither here nor there right now. But the podcast for now is more of a side hustle. And I heard Joe Rogan on a podcast a while ago talking to a guy, and he said, dude, you know how he talks.
Yeah.
Hard to kind of imitate it, but dude, I was making podcasts for like 10 years before I got paid.
Yeah.
10 years, and he's like, you just got to keep doing it. And then Gary V is like, you just got to go to a garage sale. Who does that thing with his hand?
Yeah.
No, but he's like, there are too many content creators that do whatever's trending, and you have with Instagram, you have all those reels, all those classic things that everyone does, and people copy those in the hopes of blowing up, which I'm sure works for some, but barely works for most. Gary said, don't just make content, don't make YouTube videos on what's trending, because in the long run, your channel is very, very highly unlikely to be a sustainable channel going forward for the long term. Do what speaks to you, even if it takes you years to really see growth, because at the end of the day, that's something you can actually give your all to. And that's all I needed to hear, dude. And every time I have a bit of a mental block or something in my brain is telling me, you're not that good. Podcasting's too saturated. You're not unique enough. You're not funny enough. You don't have big tits. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is, I mean, they're pretty big for a guy. But there obviously we all have our doubts. And then I look back at myself. I have the positive side of my brain. I go, shut the fuck up, Rafi. You can do this. You can do this. You're doing this. Listen, remember what Gary said, remember what Joe said. And whenever I have a difficult time mentally, I think of what both of them said. And I said, okay, I can do this. And that's really what it is. It's just being genuine. And I love the editing, dude. I have a blast. I have an editor in Pakistan. He does a great job. Mm-hmm. And anytime I have this creative thing, he'll do it. I mean, I'm going to send you this thing I had him do with one of these scenes from Troy, Troy, the movie. I had him Photoshop my face on it. I had a Russian realtor. He's a luxury realtor here. He kind of sounds like Putin. So I was making a joke. He sounds like a Russian guy, whatever. So I had Putin on a horse with like a whole like KGB suit and like a fancy hat. And I'd right next to Putin, I put him on the same horse with like a thing. And I do that with a bunch of different videos. I'll put Family Guy scenes. I'll put anything relevant, anything funny. And it's, anything. If I had this realtor coach who really helped me out. So I photoshopped her face on Wonder Woman flying. It just, just random shtick like that. But this is something I've never been able to put my creativity to work like I can now. There's never been an opportunity for me that I can now do. And the possibilities are endless. I mean, new real estate clients that don't know me from a hole in the wall, I send my podcast to them. Come check me out, get to know me. And so I don't have to chew your ear off for 2 hours. Here's a podcast. This is what I look like. This is what I sound like. This is what I discuss. Here you go. I'm an open book. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing, man, because very few realtors have podcasts, and the realtors that do have podcasts, I don't know, what do they have, 5 episodes and they quit? Most of them are audio. Very few are video. They haven't had big guests. I've had some very notable guests. So it excites me even to say all these things. It really does. It's awesome.
That's amazing, dude. I'm so excited.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Yeah, it really lights a fire under my ass the more I think about it.
So based on what you told me, like a lot of Ryan Serhant comes to mind, if you know who he is.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, like his content, I think, especially in the real estate world, is definitely innovative and definitely creative. So like I would model that in a way that still feels authentic to you. That would make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. He also said something that really hit me. He said, in the beginning stage of something, I'm going to send you this video because it's unbelievable. And he was so passionate in the video. He was throwing F-bombs every other word. And he usually doesn't do that so much, but you can tell he was so fired up about this. He said, when you're starting out in something, think of it as you're rafting against the current. Okay. And you're in this high rapid, what do they call them? Anyway, you're rafting through the rapids and you're getting knocked. The rocks are hitting you. You're about to fall off the boat. Maybe you do fall off the boat a couple of times. But you know that at the end of the day, these rapids aren't going to last forever. And there's either a big river or an ocean somewhere. And once you can get that raft through all those rapids, you eventually end up with this beautiful open body of water, and you're finally free, and you can let the oars go. You can jump out of the water if you decide to do so and float, whatever it is. But it was his rule of life. And just getting through that. So I can look at it in real estate and set a goal in terms of how many closings I have or how much commission I make. I can look at my podcast in terms of, okay, well, once I hit 10,000 subscribers, I know that, God willing, organically things should start to become a little bit easier. Definitely once I get to 100,000. So for me right now, it's that grind of, okay, I just got to keep that going until X amount of subscribers or X amount of views or whatever it is. And I look at it as little rungs on the ladder, and I just have to appreciate every small win along the way.
Yeah. So let me just touch on this really quick, because I think what you just said makes so much sense. So I have an article that comes out officially published every week. And this week's article that I just posted last night, so basically today, it was all about how hierarchies work, right, in businesses. So as well as like the owner's perspective. So what you just said, right, like you being able to appreciate that every little ladder step is something that is a lot rarer in the masses, right, in opposition to striving for motivation, admiration of things that we want. To think, and this is like the point of the article that I wrote, was if those are both ends of the spectrum, right? Like we can admire someone who has, billions of dollars, all the, crazy houses and mansions and all that stuff, someone that we want, or someone with a million subscribers. Like we admire that because it's of more value, or it's higher up on the hierarchy than we currently place ourselves, or whatever, our business or whatever we have, right? Then by nature, because it's always a gray area, we're always somewhere in the middle. We're never the least important thing in the ecosystem. We're never the most important. We're always kind of somewhere in the middle. So in that situation, I would say, okay, if we're somewhere in the middle, that means that we're not necessarily giving the resources or the attention to those lower levels that we probably should, because it's unconscious. When we place ourselves in a certain level in a hierarchy, it's so difficult to wrap our heads around the validity of the decision to give resources to someone that's below us. And that's not to say someone else. That means like the fortifying decisions that should build us up to get to where we kind of are. So what a lot of businesses and brands are doing is they're kind of standing on shaky ground because they see themselves somewhere in the middle, but the ground that they're standing on is filled with cracks. So the kind of solution to this in a sense, in an essence here, is as much as you admire all those people that you think have more than you do, like that perception of where you stand, right? You should equally be able to deploy some gratitude and some appreciation to what you've already surpassed. But it's not a direct relationship. That's what's so interesting of like how we work in the hierarchies in our brain is we admire and get motivated by people who we perceive who has more than us, so much more than we have, relished in our gratitude and what we actually accomplished, which is why in the article I mentioned that the reason that this is evident and why this is just pure fact is because think of like the outside influence that has to happen where like you have a kid or, the deal finally doesn't go through that you finally thought. And all of a sudden you have to stop. Like something outside makes you calm down for just 1 second. And you're like, oh, wait a second, look what all I've done. Like you need something almost outside and external to give you that relishing moment, but it's accessible the entire time. But we're spending like 90% of the energy trying to get something that's perceptually above us. Very interesting the way we work that way.
It's so good, dude. So good. You have a microphone? You want to just grab it, drop it?
I got my phone.
Fantastic, man. Oh, this has been so good. A lot of eye openers, man. Thank you. Thank you. Really. I got a lot of, wow. Yeah, it's been a very impactful episode.
Yeah, for sure.
I look forward to that podcast.
Yeah. We'll connect obviously after this. Like I'll make sure you're like one of the first persons to know. January 1st is when the first episode's coming out.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to wrap it up here. Dude, Anthony, thank you so much for coming over. Thanks for joining me on the pod.
I appreciate it, man.
Okay, and I'm going to drop all of your social media. So we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it afterward. Everything's going to pop up. It'll have the actual links and it'll pop up so people can see it.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Soothing Semantics. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Check out Rafi the Realtor. Also have Soothing Semantics on Instagram. I have to build that some more. TikTok, Facebook, all that good stuff. You can check it out at Rafi Pinsky and Soothing Semantics. Make sure to check out Anthony Sabatino's content as well. And that is all. Thanks again for coming on, man.
Thank you so
much. You got it.